sit back, relax, and pour yourself a nice glass of scotch because we're talking all about Mad Men. I'm Stacey Oleska with the Los Angeles Times, and joining me is, of course, Mary McNamara and Meredith Blake. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us this morning.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, I wish I wish I thought about this before and actually did pour us a nice glass of scotch.
I know. Although, are they drinking scotch anymore?
Is
Have
it
they
vodka
moved
now?
on? Yeah. It seems like tonally and the times. I mean, they're Mai Tais maybe, and
Yeah,
taking
that'd be
bong
nice.
hits. I mean, like we should have like the fake bong here. That would be good.
I think everyone would love that. So, Mary, let's talk about this week's episode. By the way, guys, for you watching, please, if you haven't watched yet, know there will be spoilers.
Go away.
As much as we love you, turn away now. Come back later. Let's talk about this week's episode. It was insane.
Totally crazy. It's like, just when you think that they've done what they can do, they do something else. And so we had a threesome, and we had. I was trying to, if we hadn't used the term nipplegate, we could use that now, but it was like we had, there must be a clinical term for somebody taking off their own whatever, but that Ginsburgs nipple was presented to Peggy as a gift of his love and proof of his, I guess, mental decline, and he was carted off onto another show, which is premiering at NBC, because you just saw him, right, Meredith? He's got a new show, the actor.
Right. He was at the NBC upfront yesterday intact, as far as I could tell.
And did anybody say anything about the
Well, I was tempted to, but I thought it might be a little inappropriate. But I'm sure he got questions all day long.
Yeah, Meredith, what did you really think about the whole nipple thing, though? Because this obviously was some type of end of his evolution of going completely insane. Was it because of the ad agency, or what got him to this point?
Well, he's always been a character that has been a little unhinged. I mean, I think he called himself a Martian at one point, and he's not someone that we've gotten to know super well, but you've always gotten a sense that he's maybe not all there. Mm-hmm. He's at the very least, he's very, very neurotic. At the most, maybe a little unwell. And I think this week we found out that he was unwell. And I think there's maybe a sense that, he's the super creative guy on the creative team. And, now this computer has arrived, and it's sort of taking over the space where the creatives like him used to work and hang out and come up with ideas. And I think, he's sort of a paranoid guy, and he sees it as a threat. And it pushed him over the edge.
Exactly.
That's how I
mean,
read
he was running around. It was like the conspiracy theory, and that the computers were there, and they were sending out vibrations, and it was going to turn everybody gay. And so he showed up like at Peggy's door, saying, we have to. What did he say? We have to procreate.
Yeah.
What did he say exactly?
And he's like, believe me, if we didn't have to have sex, I wouldn't, or something like that.
Thanks so much.
It was totally insane. I mean, it was like a Game of Thrones moment in the middle of Mad Men, which is, it's really interesting watching this show kind of try to go from, the palette that it began with, which was this very beautiful, this sheen, this golden age kind of thing, and now as it's moved through the decades, so now we're in the psychedelic 60s, and I guess, they're Matthew Weiner is trying to show that anything can happen. We're now in a decade where anything can happen. Things are going crazy. You just don't know what to expect. So he's literally throwing these plot points that are like totally dissonant to his previous, sort of the tone of the show. I mean, this one was like, it rocked everybody back, and I think it, it also even took away. I mean, it never, a threesome like came in a second. It's like that's hard to do to have like, a threesome come in second to the plot point of Mad Men.
Well, we actually had a comment too as well from someone, and if you guys, by the way, want to join our live chat, make sure to tweet us at LA Times with your comments on Mad Men, or use the hashtag AskLATimes. But one of the comments was, I saved this particular one so I could rewatch and enjoy over and over again. I think it's been the best all season.
Well, I think that it certainly is like one of the most creative ones all season. What do you think, Meredith? What do you think about this season in general?
I agree with your point about kind of the sort of weird or psychedelic, more, I don't know, Baroque, is that the right word? Elements of the show that have built kind of over the past season or so, once we've gotten into the kind of the darker end of the 60s. And if you go back, like the first kind of horrible, bloody, violent incident was the famous lawnmower attack from, I think it was season 3, and that was right before the JFK assassination. So you've kind of seen like these violent things building up as the 60s have gotten more violent. So I think there's been sort of a build, although it's become much more pronounced in the last season or two of these bloody things happening on the show. I think the season so far has been really strong. I like you. I don't really have any idea where we're going or where Dawn is going in particular, but it's been really exciting to watch. This is one episode that I thought was a little stranger and looser and a little less kind of. Usually, sometimes the themes are more neatly tied together. Sometimes maybe a little too neatly, and this is one where it was a little ragged or looser, or I don't know what the word is. I don't think it was bad. I think it was just less clear what the kind of unifying theme of the night was.
Well, it seemed too a lot of Dawn's. It seems like they're almost trying to tie up some of Dawn's story because his niece is coming back into the picture, and he's kind of closing back up with Megan again, and maybe that's part of it, is they're trying to tie it into a neat bow, which I wouldn't have expected from Mad Men, though.
I have to. We yes. do have now. We have Irish whiskey has been presented to us.
So now we are complete from our wonderful editor. Thank you so much for that delivery.
I think, the show has always been, very ambitious. From out of the box, this was going to be Weiner's story of, American history, popular culture. And so we're getting to that area where, the 60s is so hard to kind of present on television because there were so many different things, and like the idea of the touchstones that we think of, the student protests in Vietnam and Kent State, but there was also like a whole huge swath of the population that were kind of going, what the heck is going on? We're just trying to deal with that. And now you realize you have a protagonist who is actually too old to really be part of the thing, the big things that are happening. He's not going to go to Woodstock. It's like he's going to be one of those guys trying to adapt, trying to find his footing. And so I think it is really interesting to watch how the show is trying to show that tonally, that kind of like that mix up. But one of the things that you were saying about the violence, I have always really admired Mad Men for not, it's probably the only prestige drama right now that doesn't do violence. It's like it's a very thoughtful show, but every season they throw something in there just to shock you, whether it's a suicide or somebody dropping dead in the earth. It's just like something, because I guess violence does happen. I don't know about the Vincent van Gogh reference of handing somebody a body part so much. But I want to ask you, Meredith, it's like I have been reading in some of the blogging about Mad Men, I think now is the best blogging, including yours, that you see. The recaps are just amazing. It's like, just an art form. But anyway, I've been seeing people saying that there's, that they think that there's going to be a Charles Manson, incident, that somebody's, there's the Hollywood Hills. Megan has a, a house in the Hollywood Hills, and now, and the pregnant niece showed up, and now she's going to stay in the Hollywood Hills, and she's got some crazy boyfriend, and, it's like, what do you think? Is that crazy? Do you think, is that something you think about?
I think the fun of a show like Mad Men is digging into it and reading into it way too much. I know I love doing that and coming up with crazy conspiracy theories. One of my favorites was that baby Jean got switched at the hospital. That was one of my favorite conspiracy theories throughout the show, and I still think it might be true. But I think even if Matt Weiner had planned on killing her off like that, he probably would have changed it by now just to kind of defy everyone's expectations. He's someone who I don't think likes to necessarily give viewers exactly what they want, and
right.
I think just his contrarian streak, I think, would make him change it even if he had planned that, and I don't think he did. I think there's kind of a lot of atmospheric violence on the show. There's always references to like that Central Park shooting, I think it was last season. There's a lot of ways he weaves the violence of the era into the show without, necessarily having somebody slice their nipple off. And I think that's just part of what he's trying to convey about the era.
And a nice way too.
And obviously people are noticing it.
Yeah, and it kind of grounds it in what time frame it's in to remind you that it's kind of real. It's supposed to be.
No, instead of just like doing, obviously we did the assassinations, we hit some of the timeline big notes. But I think that that's something people forget, that for the people who were living through this period, particularly in Los Angeles and New York, which is where the show is set now, it was really scary. It was a very freaky time. And when you get into the Manson years, Los Angeles was, paralyzed and nobody knew what was going on because it didn't make any sense. And I think that that's a lot of what's happening, and that's, so I think that that's actually being reflected, is like the time didn't make sense. So I think we're going to see probably some more things that like sort of come out of left field.
Yes. Another comment we just got to on Twitter from Nicole Blade. She says, "The nipple in Mr. Ginsburg. Come on, that's an excellent title for a short story. or a highbrow punk band. You know I'm right. And then John Favreau actually wrote, did I doze off and have a weird dream, or was that the real ending of #Mad Men? So there's, lots of people are still really talking about the show, which is great. Let's get into one more thing, too, about Don last night. Obviously, we have to talk more about him. Everything with kind of selling out for the cigarettes.
Right.
What's happening with that?
I know. He's like, well, he's willing to like sort of debase himself.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like, he's not the alpha dog that he once was, where he felt like he could do and say anything. And so now he's basically, he really doesn't want to lose his job.
Yeah.
You know, he'll do anything to remain the force.
Why didn't he take that other job?
I don't, Don Draper has always been a mystery to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think that there's something about, he is a man who, the character is about spinning a mythology. It's like, and so I think that that's what he's good at. He's good at spinning mythology, and that's what he wants. He believes in that. He believes that's his power.
Meredith, how do you think things are going to end for Don after the second part of this season?
You mean after all 14 episodes?
Yes. How do you think it's going to wrap up for him?
I can't imagine that it's going to be super happy. It's never been a super happy show. I think it could end on a mildly optimistic note, which we've seen a few times, like at the end of last season where Don told his children about his past and his childhood. That was sort of a huge step forward, and it was hopeful in a very small way. But I tend to think it's not going to end great, because it is the story in some ways of an era that didn't end that great. And Don is very emblematic kind of an old way, sort of the 50s ideal. And I just think, every season we come back and the question is always, is this change permanent? Has Don been able to be a better person and be happy? And the answer is usually no. So I can't imagine that changing. He makes incremental change. It's very, very small steps forward. And I think that's what we'll see in the last, 9 episodes we have left now?
Yeah. What about Betty and the kids? What do you think?
Well, I think that's interesting. I mean, I would like to see more of the kids, because now we're entering an age where the kids should be, this is the age of the kids. I also think it's really how they're balancing Betty and Megan. That so Betty is just like hanging on for dear life to the old ways and the, getting mad at Sally because she hurt her nose and like how awful that's going to be, and and Megan's out there exploring with in Los Angeles and godless Los Angeles doing all these crazy things. So you're kind of seeing like with those two characters the kind of the different sorts of women, and then you have Peggy and Joan, who, I mean, I feel like Peggy's lost a little bit of her mojo this season. I mean, she's like gone, she can't really figure out what she wants to do, and she's just kind of, angry and unhappy, and, but, on the other hand, it's like, we were saying earlier, it's like I almost wish I knew how it ended, so I would know where all of this fits in terms of, well, I do feel like Weiner has something big to say. I'm not sure what it is yet, and so I'm not sure where all of these things. I think once we get to the end, we'll be able to look back on some of these, changes in episodes and go, oh, that's where that was leading. And so right now, it's got a lost kind of feel to it. You just have to surrender to the show.
Are they all in purgatory? What's
exactly.
Yeah.
Where is that polar bear?
Okay, so we know that Game of Thrones is the best show of all time. Is Mad Men the smartest show of all time?
I don't know if I would say that. I mean, it's a very smart show. I think, I just wrote a piece, I think it was out on Sunday, about Mad Men is what ushered in this big golden, age of television, the renaissance of television, because it took, kind of the high art that was happening at HBO and Showtime, and it brought it to a standard cable, so anybody could get it. I mean, not anybody, but anybody who had a cable package could get it. And so, it just opened the door. Everybody, oh my gosh, if AMC can do this, we can do it. And so that's why you've seen, History and Discovery, and I mean, every network is, trotting out these, often historic with these brooding heroes, and it's like, and so it's possibly, one of the most influential shows in the history of television. I would say that.
Meredith, what do you think? Smartest show of all time?
Smart is always a dangerous word.
Is it the show that makes you think the most? Because I feel like I have to think so much watching the show.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
in that deconstructing way,
Yeah.
And I think, it very consciously draws in culture from the era, the politics of the era, even visually it does interesting things that, TV nerds like me get really into. I think in terms of as sort of a text that people look at, it's one of the smartest shows out there and richest. There's just always a lot going on. You know, every week when I cover the show, I always think, oh, not that much happened. I won't have that much to write about. And then, you know, thousands of words later, there's always something to talk about with the show. Just, you know, the writing is smart enough and rich and layered enough that there's always lots of things to latch onto, even if plot-wise virtually nothing happens, which is usually what happens.
I think, yeah, I mean, it's probably one of the most literary shows in that you treat it the way you treat, like, Look Homeward Angel or something, where it's like you have to, like, really go in, like, you almost feel like you need a highlighter, you know, to, like, keep it, like, oh, wait, this is referencing, it's very it's, you know, it references culture, it references history, it references itself, you know, so it is that, and I think that again, you're seeing that be copied in various ways on television shows, and now even on the traditional broadcast networks, you know, where you see some of these shows that are very rich and character driven, that are very thematic, that are not necessarily plot driven, that don't rely on violence, you know, that are, you know, kind of about something, you know. So we had Seinfeld, you know, the comedy that was about nothing, and then we have Mad Men, which is about everything, and we just sort of have to figure out what it is.
All right. So besides Mad Men, what else are you watching this week?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm still watching 24. I'm very excited about 24. And the Blacklist just ended, and now I'm going to have to wait and see what happens. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is going to be its season finale. I can't wait to see what happens. And let's see, what else? Is there anything? You know, Penny Dreadful is interesting. I'm like sort of withholding judgment. I need to see a couple more episodes before I figure out what that's about. So.
Well, so lots of good stuff.
Yeah.
Meredith, what about you? What are you watching on TV this week?
Orphan Black.
Orphan Black, yes. How could I have missed Orphan Black?
Come on, Meredith.
I don't know.
Orphan Black. I've been watching Playing House on USA, and I really like that. Sort of a new sitcom. I've been watching trailers for the new fall shows.
Anything look good?
But yeah, keeping busy.
Nice. Well,
Call the Midwife. I still watch that.
The what?
Call the Midwife.
Oh, I love Call the Midwife.
Yes. Yeah.
Everybody should watch Call the Midwife.
All right. Well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, so it's time for us to have a little Don Draper. I'm sorry that we couldn't send Meredith. And please, for more news, information, and entertainment and reviews of Mad Men, visit us at latimes.com. Cheers.
Cheers.